Thank you so much for joining us for another one of our Career Cafe interviews. My name is Cindy Lucio, and I'm here with the ELAC Career and Job Services Center. And today we'll be interviewing Shirley Lee. So hello, Shirley. Thank you so much for joining us today. For our first question, we have, can you tell me a bit about your personal background and career path that led you to the role you're in today?
Okay, I was undergrad English literature at Cal State Northridge. After I graduated, I went to UCLA paralegal school because I wanted to get an experience in law before I actually went to law school. And that was a great experience. I worked for about 4.5 years for a litigation law firm. And at the time, they didn't know what paralegals could do. So they gave me everything. And in hindsight, everything means everything that a first year associate would do. So I actually I went through interrogatories, which are questions, which we do for discovery, for each side to discover information. I also went to a military base to look at a crash site, and they gave me the NTSB report and told me, find the piece that's broken. In today's world, that would never happen. You would send an expert. You would not send a green paralegal. But it was fascinating, and I enjoyed it tremendously. And the guys in the law firm were wonderful, and they told me, if you could do all this, then you should go to law school. So after 4 years, I went to law school at Loyola Marymount Law School in downtown LA. It was quite a challenge, but I would have to say doing the paralegal work really helped me to understand the process. One of the first year classes is civil procedure, and most people can't figure out what it's about. So if you work in the legal field, you find out pretty quickly. It's a practical class, but if you come straight from undergrad, you have no idea what it's about. But if you work and volunteer in law offices or in law backgrounds, it will help tremendously. So I know a lot of people go straight into law school from undergrad, but if you're not sure and you don't want to spend thousands of dollars in law school, I would suggest you either volunteer somewhere, maybe legal aid or in a law firm, do an internship or something, be a gopher, and find out if it's the kind of law you want to do, because it's really different than on television. A good background undergrad study would be English lit, because you learn how to write and you actually learn how to analyze writing, which is what you do in law school. Another one I can't remember is poli-sci is a good one also, because you do a lot of reading and a lot of analysis. And one of the key classes in law school is contracts. And no matter what kind of law you end up practicing, everybody has a contract. So it's a very important class, and it's a very important concept to be understood.
Awesome, thank you. For our next question, we have, what skills do you think are most important for someone interested in a job like yours? What are your biggest challenges that you face day to day?
Okay. If you're interested in going into the legal field, there's two very important skills I think that every lawyer has to have. It's really important to be a good listener, because people will give you information without being aware of it, and you need to retain it so that you can ask questions, because they're not exactly sure what you're looking for when you interview them, and you're not exactly sure what information you're going to receive. So it's very important that you be a good listener and take good notes. Another, I think, skill is also the ability to put facts together without making presumptions, because every case is very different. For 15 years, I did employment, not labor, but employment law, HR law, for a corporation, World Vision, and our employees were from all over the world. which means that there's a lot of different cultures that you have to deal with. But in the essence, they were either all trying to improve an employee's performance or they were interested in firing them. So, and always the manager thinks they know everything. But and cross-culturally, I think being able to communicate to an employee that they need to improve performance or behavior is a very, very difficult thing for most managers to do, because that means a bit of confrontation. And most people, no matter what culture they are, they don't like confrontation. So being a lawyer, you have to be able to ask managers questions about the employee, about their conduct, about performance. And sometimes you have to guide them to understand how they might be able to either improve performance or put the employee on notice so they know that they need to improve their behavior and how to do it. And law school does not necessarily teach you those skills. They will teach you the law. They will teach you subject matter, but they won't teach you how to really listen and how to manage your clients. That is a skill that you have to learn, people skills that you have to learn. And I know on television, the lawyers are always talking, but actually it's important for lawyers to listen. So when we do talk, we know what questions to ask the client so they don't get really defensive and really angry. Because a lot of times they just want the lawyer to bless whatever they're doing and they don't really want to hear your advice. So it's important to be calm and to be able to listen to what they're telling you, the facts of the case, respect the culture, whether it's American or international, and be able to give advice in a way that will not cause your client to be defensive or angry. Because your goal is different from their goal. Your goal is to figure out the problem and how to solve it. Their goal is to get legal blessing on whatever it is they want to do, even if it's not completely correct. So listening is really important. Secondly, being able to apply the law to the facts of a case, because every single case is really different. And you may be able to get a couple of the facts that you need, but there might, more often than not, there's holes in the case and you need additional information. And you have to figure out, how are you going to get this information? Is it something that your client can give you, or is it something that your client can ask around and find out? In my case, because we were dealing with international offices around the world, I always had to find out, okay, what's the policy for that office? What is their hiring practice? And how do they have a notice process for improving employee behavior or conduct? What is the area of law I'm dealing with in that particular office? And so it's you have to be aware of what your needs are and not being afraid to ask, because if you don't ask, you won't know, and you can make a mistake that will cost you the case or the situation.
What do you enjoy most about the work you do? What are you most excited about right now?
Am I most excited about? Uh, well, it's kind of a long story. I worked for World Vision International for 20 years. And originally here in Los Angeles, it was World Vision US, which is down here, which was our fundraiser back in the 1990s, and World Vision International, which is a separate subdivision, which does all the management and operations of all the international offices. World Vision US just handles the United States. So I wanted to work for World Vision US back in the 1999, but their offices moved to Seattle. So I volunteered there, and this is one tip I'd like to give anybody who wants to get into any kind of profession. Do not look down on volunteering or internships, because they could lead you, it's the network. It could lead you to your next boss or your next job. So I volunteered for WVUS for a year and a half after coming out of law school, because I wanted to work with kids. And then they moved to Seattle or Federal Way, and there was no opening for another attorney. So I looked in LA County to find a place that worked with children, and I found Children's Court in Monterey Park. And I worked there for 2.5 years representing children with a caseload of roughly 300 children. well, actually 200 cases children, 100 cases parent. And I started there volunteering for the first 6 months. I was not paid. I wanted to find out what it was about first. And in whatever volunteer job you do the best that you can, because you have no idea who's watching and what impression you are leaving on people. Well, I guess I must have did a pretty good job at World Vision US, and I did a very good job at Children's Court, because 6 months after I started volunteering at Children's Court, an opening for a job happened. I was working for one of the 3 law firms that represented kids. They're called captured law firms. And one of the attorneys in our firm quit at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at the time, the guy who was the head of our office saw that what I could do, and he went to the head of the children's court and said, look, I know under EEOC, and I'm divulging this as a secret, I'm not giving any names. Uh, it's a county, they're supposed to post the jobs for 24 hours so that people can look and find it. They can't normally hire within. That's kind of an exception to the rule. Well, the head of the office listened to my boss, and he said, okay, if she's that good, and he goes, she's already licensed, she already knows what we do, and I like what she does. So can I hire her? And the head boss let him hire me. So I had a job at 3 o'clock that afternoon. So the attorney who quit at 9, and I was hired at 3 on the same day. And that's only because I volunteered, I did a good job, and they liked what I could do. And I was also a licensed attorney at the time, so they wouldn't have to wait for me to pass the bar. So I worked there for 2.5 years, loved the kids, was paid peanuts as a private attorney, but I loved the kids. And it was emotionally really tough, because you see these kids, people want to become district attorneys or defense attorneys. We're one step farther left than the attorneys that defend the criminals. We get their kids. So we get the kids who have been in homes with substance abuse, physical abuse, cocaine, you name it, we get them. And so, and the kids, I just love them. And no matter, I'm a Christian, but no matter what religion you were, of all the kids attorneys, we all believe that unless a child found a home or someone who loved them before they were 10 years old, they were a juvenile delinquent waiting to happen, because they had no core understanding of love and tenderness. And they would end up being a kid that was angry at their parents, a kid angry at foster care, a kid that's angry at society because everybody had failed. So we tried really hard to find homes and places for these kids in children's courts. Well, lo and behold, after I won my first trial after 2.5 years in children's court, I get a phone call from World Vision International, and they're looking for an attorney. Well, I wasn't looking for a job at the time, because I just won my first case in children's court, and I was very happy. But apparently, General Counsel from World Vision International, which stayed in Los Angeles, called General Counsel at WVUS, who was up in Seattle, and asked if there was any recommendations that he would give. And Mark, General Counsel up in Seattle, told Mike, the international General Counsel, that if he would hire anybody, he remembered me, and he gave them my name. And so HR at World Vision International came looking for me, asking whether or not I would interview for the job in Los Angeles. Well, I was pretty shocked, and I wasn't ready to really leave children's court. But my mom and my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, said, go interview, go interview. So I went to interview. And the interview for the job was 60% HR, which I had no experience in whatsoever. I had experience in wrongful death from being a paralegal in aviation air crashes and child protection. But no one told me the job was actually looking for the child protection piece till after I was hired. So it was really kind of wonderful, because my heart was really about children and about protecting them. And at the time, back in 1999, 2000, World Vision International had about 2 million children in sponsorship, and they had no child protection policies or practices. They did no child background checks. They did no things that we would do now in the 2000s that are no-brainers. Background checks, fingerprints, special escorts for any kind of visits to children in these developing countries, because we worked in developing countries, in 99 developing countries worldwide, 80% were in Africa. And these were children in poverty. They lived with dirt floors and in huts. And so I worked with with a newly appointed child protection director, and we worked together to do the develop the child protection policy and practices for World Vision. And that was probably the highlight of my entire career, because even though I'm retired now, the child protection policy is still in place, and the practices got better and better and better. So to me, my legacy, the thing I enjoyed the most was working with World Vision, working internationally, having my own area. We had 5 attorneys. We divided the globe in 5 parts. And I had all of Asia Pacific, which covered about 25 countries. So I did a lot of traveling. I met a lot of fabulous people. And it was all, mostly with working with child protection. I even got to visit some of their trauma centers where the girls were rescued from the brothels. Sex trafficking is huge in Asia, unfortunately. And we had a lot of kids girls that needed to be rescued. IJM, International Justice Missions, would rescue them, and then they would put them in our care. And it was really a tough job, but it's something that I really loved and was necessary and needed to do. So there are a lot of good jobs out there for lawyers, not just litigation. There's a lot of good jobs in legal aid and sex trafficking, even here in Los Angeles. And I would hope there would be people that would be more interested in doing those cases as well as the criminal and the civil litigation cases. And that was probably the highlight of my career. God put me, and He used everything that I had ever done to be in this job and to be able to travel and be able to work towards helping kids and helping people who worked with kids. And the other thing was when we had these huge disasters like hurricane in Indonesia, we created what we call child-friendly spaces, because a lot of kids got separated from their parents when the hurricane hit, and now that's part of our standard practice when we do refugee or any kind of rescuing of natural disasters. So a lot of practices were developed in my time when I was there. I never knew in the original interview that they were looking for child protection background. So God used everything. I was only a child protection practice for 2 years, but I ended up in children's court, but ended up doing child protection for 20 years at World Vision. And that was one thing that I really enjoyed.
Thank you. For our next question, we have, what recommendations should students explore to enter this field? What are common entry-level jobs?
Okay. What are recommendations students should explore to enter this field? Well, I think first of all, you have to enjoy writing, because legal is a lot of writing and a lot of analysis. So if you're an English major, English lit major, poli-sci major, even a psychology major, if you are comfortable with writing and doing analysis of facts, that would probably be a really good place to start. Because usually you're handed a set of facts and you have to take a look at it and kind of analyze it given your background. And before law school, I say volunteer in a law firm or legal aid place. Find out what kind of law that you might be interested in doing. Entry-level jobs, if you're like me and you didn't want to jump wholeheartedly into law school, I went to paralegal school. And at the time, UCLA had a 6-month certificate program for paralegal school. And I'm not exactly sure how much paralegals are paid now, because I haven't been a paralegal for 20-something years. But in the old days, I think they were making about 35,000 a year. So that way you could figure out if you really wanted to go that route. And I would suggest that, or the volunteering or working at legal aid, because a lot of my friends who went to law school, they came out of law school and they practiced for 1 year and they said, I don't want to do this anymore. But they've already spent thousands and thousands of dollars going to law school. So you don't want to do that. I would not recommend that as a way of finding out your career path. I would say explore the legal field before you commit to law school, unless you know for certain that's what your passion is. And that's the other thing I would say, no matter whether it's law or any other type of field of practice, follow your passion. If there's an area that you really enjoy practicing, like I enjoyed practicing child protection tremendously because my heart is with children. If there's other areas, like if you're already an engineer or you want to go into environmental, you can always join a law degree with environmental. Or if you want to, if you're into immigration law is a great place to help people if you're into immigration. And I know right now with Trump in office, it's a very difficult field to practice because I also did a U.S. work visas for the corporation for World Vision because we had so many international employees. And I would have to say Trump has it really wrong. Immigration actually does a lot of work, good work with people who are residents, and they don't make it easy by any stretch of the imagination to get a U.S. residency card or a green card or a citizenship. It's a long, long path. And immigration and HR are very people-oriented fields. If you're comfortable working with people, then HR, employment, even maybe labor. Labor is more unions. Employment law is more HR law. And there are whole law firms that all they do is HR. And every single corporation in America or outside of America all have employees. Everybody has employees. So there's always employment law. You'll never be out of a job. But you have to be able to enjoy being with people and working with people. And I had mentioned earlier, contracts is a bread and butter of a lot of practices because transactional, the business to business, they do a lot of contracts. And then also if you're interested in entertainment law, Los Angeles has a huge practice here in LA. The many law firms, many studios here who are always looking for good lawyers. You can do volunteer work there or ask if there's an internship there and find out. And a lot of the movies today, they play old music and they need to get licenses for every single one of those songs before they can play them in the movies. So there's jobs for that as well. So yeah, I mean, getting a law degree does not necessarily mean you're going to be in criminal court or litigation. It's like getting a MD, a doctor. You get to specialize in the areas that you are interested. If you're interested in stocks and bonds, you can do securities and go to New York City. So those are all the different fields. There's numerous fields, but I would say get some experience, find areas that you want to work in, and go for it. But if you're going to work 40 hours a week in any job, you better enjoy what you're going to do because you're going to do more than 40 hours a week.
Okay, absolutely. In terms of maybe like what that would for a college student, for example, in a community college,
Mm-hmm.
what would you suggest as a way to explore law?
I would say legal aid is a really good place to start because there's the Legal Aid Society of Los Angeles. There's also the Christian, there's a Christian legal aid also. And they get multiple kinds of, you're helping people in the community and you get to see what that's like. Or if, let's see, I was a paralegal that took like a 6-month certificate. Other jobs might be being a gopher in a job. I know that sounds terrible, but I mean, you start at the bottom, you get to see everybody and you get to see all the personalities. Every law firm has mail rooms. They have jobs that are open that might lead to something. If you have secretary skills, you might want to start with that. You can do secretarial work in a law firm, or go on the internet and I think explore, because now there's a lot of really good, I think, job boards, and you can type in legal and see what comes up and what kind of opportunities are available. I just know that Legal Aid Society of Los Angeles and the Christian Legal Aid Society, they both like volunteers and people that come along and to help. World Vision actually has a World Vision International, I think World Vision US, they had before COVID, I don't know if they do anymore. They had like a fellowship if you are a college student or a recent college grad. I think they are high school grad. I don't know, I can't remember what the criteria was, but they can reach out to HR and see if that program is still running. I think they used to have it once a year or twice a year. They have a cohort in the fall and maybe a cohort in the spring. And you would able to, and not necessarily just legal. They also had jobs in other departments because we were international. They had jobs in HR, they had jobs in IT. I mean, not jobs, I'm sorry, fellowships, fellows that would be attached to each one of these departments to learn more about it.
Awesome.
There's
Thank you so much
also
for
Salvation Army is in Long Beach, I believe. And there's other nonprofits if you're interested in nonprofit law. A lot of interns wanted to work for nonprofits straight out of law school, but I told them you really need to develop an area of practice so that when we hire you, you bring something to the nonprofit, because it's difficult to train a nonprofit for us to train somebody who has no experience. So if you have some experience, then we can give you more. Like I didn't have any experience in HR when I started, and I learned on the job and actually told general counsel that's not a good way to go because HR is so complicated. But yeah, get your experience as a volunteer, as an intern, and it will pay off, either in networking or in skills, because you'll meet people and they'll remember you for better or worse. Hopefully they'll remember you for better.
Awesome. Thank you. And for our last question, if you could do it over again, how would you pursue your career path?
Wow, that's an interesting question. I could do it all over again. I'm not sure I would be a lawyer. I know that sounds shocking, but I've had a great career. I'm not saying I didn't have a great career, and I had great opportunities. I traveled a lot, and I was able to practice child protection law. But sometimes I think I would have pursued maybe a more creative job, maybe architecture or interior design. But that's okay. I'm retired now, and I can probably go back and do something else now. But I fully think I had a really wonderful career as a lawyer, one that I don't know that most people would have had that opportunity, because most people go to law firms. And when I came out of law school, I decided I didn't, because it wasn't really for me, which was a big disappointment to the law firm that I worked for as a paralegal, because they were hoping they'd have another associate really quickly. But be open to life and what your passion is, what you're interested in. You'll be shocked and surprised, pleasantly surprised where that might lead you.